Friday happy hour. How's everybody doing? Time to answer some of your questions. That's the purpose of this show. I'll only bust out the spreadsheet if I need to, but I want to see some good questions roll in about the 49ers, who currently have 3 days off. They'll reconvene for practice on Monday, and then it gets going. Season opener, 49ers at Detroit. It's been a long time coming. You've heard me say this many times. This has been the longest off season ever. So I'm happy that it's almost over. And yes, I am here. I was working with some tweaks to the layout, as you see down there. Lombardi himself on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok. Running a TikTok too. So what am I, like 12 years old? I'm actually 33, but I feel 12 with that TikTok up there. But there's some good stuff. And the funny thing is that for YouTube, you normally want the horizontally oriented videos, and for TikTok, you want the vertically oriented videos. So you end up taking way too many videos. But it just seems that different age groups have different attention spans and different app preferences, and we're trying to get everybody involved here. So these YouTube lives, these are longer format. These are for people that want to get a little bit more in depth, but I guess you could only watch for 30 seconds and be happy too. But here for this Q&A, we'll be around a little bit longer. So I hope that there are some questions already. You guys have been impatiently commenting here, waiting for me to get online, but I am now here, and you could have spent the time asking good questions. So now I'm just gonna have to sit here waiting for questions. You know me, I could just talk about the 49ers forever. I don't really need your questions. We had a good 2 days out of practice on Wednesday and Thursday. The team is slowly rounding into form as far as health goes. Brandon Ayuk was doing some wind sprints yesterday. So was Dante Johnson, who, again, is on the 53-man roster. You know, first I gave myself a score 48 out of 53 on my projected 53-man roster because I thought that I got Dante Johnson wrong. Turns out that I got Dante Johnson right. It was just that the 49ers were carrying Devontae Harris, the other cornerback, on the initial 53, but the very next day they put Devontae on injured reserves. They could bring him back this season. I believe it was a hamstring issue. And they put Dante Johnson on. So you can't get rid of Dante Johnson. He's always going to be on your 49ers 53-man roster. And it made sense. It turns out that the 49ers were just carrying Devontae Harris along on that first roster because they were afraid somebody would claim him. And that checks out logically because the 49ers claimed Devontae Harris, I believe, from Jacksonville's waivers in the first place. So when you do claim somebody from waivers, you naturally assume that another team will claim him if you waive the guy. So that was the case with Devontae Harris. They knew he had a hamstring issue. They carried him on the roster, kind of like Maurice Hurst. They knew that he was hurt, carried him on the roster to make sure he could come back this season. So now it's not a final roster. We might still see the 49ers bring somebody like Travis Benjamin up for week one if they really need a speed threat or a punt returner. But based on what Kyle Shanahan has been saying, the punt returner, or at least the primary one, is already on the 49ers 53-man roster as we speak. So what does that mean? That might mean that Brandon Ayuk actually is the guy because he looks healthy doing his wind sprints on the side. The hamstring injury was really minor. And I guess this is the first thing that I'll talk about. There is an injury risk with every single football play. So if you're worried about Brandon Ayuk getting hurt on punt returns, you should also be worried about him catching any pass on offense, including bubble screens, crossers, running any jet sweep motion. I mean, Shanahan does anything and everything with him. In fact, I would argue that punt returns may be safer than some of those offensive plays. It's the kickoff returns that are the most dangerous plays in football. And even those, the NFL's tried to assuage some of the danger by moving the tee up and by not allowing players to get running starts on the kick coverage units. So, you know, I would not put Brandon Ayuk on a kick return because I still think that despite the NFL rule changes, fundamentally you have two sides picking up full heads of steam, running at each other from opposite ends of the field. And that can turn into a situation in which there is a minor car accident in the middle of the field. But on punt return, you don't have that. On punt return, the returner is not picking up a full head of steam. The gunners obviously are, but the returner is going to have a chance to either call a fair catch to protect himself or dodge them in a way. And in essence, it's matter of just giving a playmaker another opportunity with the ball in space, which is why Kyle Shanahan has said this week that he has no problem giving a starting receiver the punt return job. Last season, the 49ers were the second to worst team as far as punt return efficiency went. They lost nearly 21 expected points just through punt returns. 3 touchdowns, 21 expected points, 3 touchdowns and extra points that the 49ers lost through punt returns. That's how bad they were there. And people act like, oh, if he doesn't bust it for a touchdown, then it's not, worth it to put him in there as a punt returner. And touchdowns as punt returners are so rare, we shouldn't risk it. That is an all or nothing mentality that just is incorrect as far as evaluating the potential efficiency of punt returns. Here's the thing, guys. Every single yard on the football field is worth something as far as expected points go analytically. I mean, they've done studies up the wazoo on this. If you get the ball at your 40 as opposed to the opponent's 35-yard line, that's, 10 plus 15, that 25-yard difference is going to hurt you. Just like getting the ball at your 40 versus your 45 is also going to hurt you. Not as much. It's only 5 yards instead of 25 yards, but every single yard on the football field is equated with greater or lesser expected points. So you're trying to glean every single yard. And it doesn't matter if you get that yard on a jet sweep on 1st and 10, on a crosser on 2nd and 5, or on a punt return, thanks to Brandon Ayuk picking up 22 yards on the punt return, or Ayuk picking up 6 yards when the next best punt returner could only pick up 2. You still gained 4 extra yards. Those 4 extra yards inherently have some value. So wherever you get them, they all mean the same. They're all equal as far as expected points go. So it doesn't make any sense to me to shield Brandon Ayuk from punt returns because somehow offense means more than the yardage you might gain through those punt returns. It's not true. The yardage means the same in both instances. And in fact, one could argue that a player like Ayuk with another opportunity, an added opportunity with the football in space that he can get through punt returns, he might have a better chance there to break one free than he does when he's thrown a bubble screen and everybody's hoarding around him and tacklers are all trying to kill him. I think relatively speaking, it's equal. I think the actual danger is on kick returns. Even that's been mitigated. But if Kyle Shanahan believes that punt returns are within Brandon Ayuk's play limit per game, because the one area where it could get sketchy is Kyle Shanahan only wants him to play a certain amount of snaps per game so he doesn't get hurt. So punt returns fall within that umbrella, which I believe Shanahan is planning for, then why not put him out there? I mean, the guy, he's a football player. He's getting tackled on crossers. He's getting tackled on outs. He got destroyed against Washington last year on an out near the line of scrimmage. Nobody was complaining about that. And nobody was saying, oh, we shouldn't play him at receiver anymore because he's going to get tackled. No, this is football. You play to gain yardage. You play to put your playmakers in positions to make plays. No questions about it. Deion Sanders returned punts. I mean, there's a long list of star players who return punts because they're good at it and it brought value to their team. And I can't remember the last time a 49ers punt returner got hurt. I do remember the last time a 49ers punt returner cost them the game. And I believe it was Trent Taylor. Maybe it was Richie James. I forgot who it was, but it happened a lot in 2021. It happened in January 2012 when Kyle Williams fumbled twice. You need a reliable body back there, a punt returner, which also means that the 49ers and those of us who follow the team should not rule out Mohamed Sanu getting back there and returning some punts. He's done it recently. I think he's done it without fumbling. He's not as explosive as Brandon Ayuk, but sometimes you're just looking for somebody to catch the ball and not damage you any further, right? So the two guys on this 53-man roster as we speak with punt return experience are Brandon Ayuk and Mohamed Sanu. And, take whatever Kyle Shanahan said at face value, but he did state that he believes the 49ers' primary punt returner is currently on the 53-man roster, and Travis Benjamin is not currently on the 53-man roster on the practice squad. Yep, Antonio Brown returned punts. John Taylor returned punts, former 49ers great. There was their second receiver right behind Jerry Rice. You try to get value everywhere you can. And if you're playing scared of injuries at every juncture, you might as well not play Brandon Ayuk at all. You might as well just put him in bubble wrap, keep him in bubble wrap on the sideline, and leave it there. Shanahan has left us hints that this has been his desired course of action for a while now. Starting with the fact that he said that he wouldn't carry a punt returner on the 53-man roster just for the hell of carrying a punt returner. 53-man rosters don't have enough room on them to just carry specialists for the hell of it. And we saw that with the 49ers 53-man roster construction. There was a lot of talk about them carrying either Richie James, Simba Webster, or Travis Benjamin and displacing a guy like Juwan Jennings or Jalen Hurd just so the 49ers could have a dedicated returner. Well, guess what the 49ers didn't do? They didn't do that. They carried both Jalen Hurd and Juwan Jennings, two guys who were obviously receiving specialists, punt return specialists. And the odd man out was the guy who's actually has a very stellar track record of punt returning in Travis Benjamin. Back in his younger days, Benjamin returned 4 punts for touchdowns, which is extremely impressive in the NFL over the course of his career. That still wasn't enough for the 49ers to carve out a role for him. They rather would have that role on the 53, at least for now, with for Juwan Jennings and Jalen Hurd. So obviously Shanahan in that 53 construction prioritized offense over punt returning. And in prioritizing offense, he's saying one of my receivers or one of my cornerbacks can do the job. And I don't think any of the corners on this 49ers roster are ready to do that punt returning job. So the one with experience that has some potential explosiveness is Brandon Ayuk, and the one with experience that has some potential dependability is Mohamed Sanu. And those are the two bodies that you're dealing with right now. All right, time to move on to some questions. Let's take a look. I've talked about the punt return situation for a little while, and now I'm going to pop open some questions. How do you think this year's 2021 49ers roster stacks up against 2019 49ers roster? That's a great question. Let's go through it position by position. At quarterback, the 49ers are better than they were in 2019. They had Garoppolo, and he was healthy for all 19 games in 2019. He was a good quarterback for him. But just in case something happened to Garoppolo, which it didn't, but we saw it happen in 2018 and 2020, the 49ers would have been in trouble in 2019. This season, they have insurance for Garoppolo and Trey Lance, and they have insurance for Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. Also, on top of the whole insurance proposition, the 49ers now can run 2 quarterbacks simultaneously. And we've already seen that in action in practice and against the Raiders. I think that the presence of Trey Lance is going to make the 49ers run game exponentially better. And, I guess it was already good in 2019. Maybe I overstated that. Exponentially better would be like, you would have to multiply tenfold. But no, it's going to be significantly better. Let's put it that way. The opportunities that the 49ers run game and guys like Raheem Mostert will see in space, maybe even JaMychal Hasty, I know the fan favorite, those chances should increase because Trey Lance adds a different dimension that the defense has to worry about. And I think that we already saw it. I mean, he handed off every single time against the Raiders, but when Trey Lance holds the ball and keeps it, and maybe that's not going to happen as often as when he hands it off, but it will happen enough to the point where defenses are going to have to account for him. That in and of itself is going to butcher defensive schemes. Defensive coordinators are going to have a headache planning for the 49ers run game with the chance that Trey Lance is going to come in on any given down. Now, when will that exactly happen? I'm not sure because Trey's still dealing with a chip in his finger. 49ers are optimistic that he'll be back at practice Monday, but there's a chance that's also not the case, so maybe we have to wait till a little bit later in the season. But the 49ers love the floor they have with a motivated Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback, and they love the upside that Trey Lance can bring immediately, especially in the run game, given the threat that his legs pose. Now, as Trey gets more and more comfortable passing the football, this 2-quarterback system will get more and more lethal because then opponents will also have to be really worried about him uncorking one deep or firing a rifle over the middle, whatever you want. But on a fundamental level, the 2019 49ers just didn't have quarterback insurance. The 2021 49ers do. And I think on a more schematic level, the 2021 49ers can turbocharge the offense from the quarterback position using Lance's legs as a basis and then using his arm as a bonus. You move to running back. Well, right away, you have a 3rd-round pick who's really promising, Trey Sermon, instead of Tevin Coleman, who didn't have a great year in 2019. He was okay, but he didn't have a great year. So I think you've upgraded there. I think Raheem Mostert is further into his prime than he was then. You hope that the presence of Sermon alleviates pressure from Mostert and Mostert stays healthy for the course of the season, because then you could really be looked at as a top tier back. Guys, the speed of Raheem Mostert to get to the edges changes the way defenses have to play the 49ers, and it opens a whole lot of stuff right up the gut. That's why you saw against the Packers, the minute Mostert got around to the side, the inside was open. I mean, that first draw, the touchdown on third down, I believe it was a third down draw against the Packers. You saw that defense was so stretched out because they had gotten so bullied by the 49ers the first time they played, and the 49ers were already moving the ball the second time they played. That was just a gash, and it was gash after gash after gash. So you still have Mostert. The idea to trade him was completely idiotic this offseason. You could see why they still have him. And they also have another burst guy in Elijah Mitchell, who I really like. And then, of course, you have JaMychal Hasty, who's a burst guy. So, I mean, the running back room, healthy as it is right now, with Jeff Wilson waiting to come back around midseason, it's as good as it's ever been. So you got to like where the 49ers are at quarterback-wise. You got to like where they're at running back-wise in relation to 2019. Obviously, Juszczyk is still there. Josh Hokett is an important developmental guy on the practice squad because you never know when Juszczyk is going to miss a game or two. One of the things about 2019 is that I think Juszczyk missed 3 or 4 games right there in the middle. And that did compromise the 49ers offense because they had to move to Ross Dwelly at fullback. And Ross Dwelly doesn't have the natural build to execute the blocks that Kyle Shanahan needs at that position. And it also weakened the tight end room, right? I think you had Garrett Selleck playing for a while against the Seahawks in that season before he retired. So you want a natural and a naturally built fullback to fill in case Juszczyk misses time, which, probably going to happen for at least a game or two. You just don't know how this is all going to play out. But the fact of the matter is this is a 17-game schedule and you need depth. And that's why I pay a lot of attention to the depth of the 49ers have. And I truly think that based on some of the blocks that Josh Hokett laid in the preseason, some of the development that he's made as a route runner, and some of his ability to run the football as a former multi-purpose back at Fresno State, I think Josh Hokett gives you much needed depth off the practice squad at the fullback position that inherently makes the 49ers better there in 2021 than they were in 2019. Okay, so we've gone through 2 positions. Receiver. Remember how big of a problem receiver was in 2019 before the trade for Emmanuel Sanders? The 49ers drop rate first or second games was through the roof. They weren't sure who their number one guy was. It was obviously, in the terms of tight ends and receivers, it was George Kittle. But George Kittle got, so much of that workload between blocking and passing that you just had to take some strain off of him. You had to take some focus off of him. So the player was no surprise to me. Garoppolo and Emmanuel Sanders just hit it off immediately. Remember that nice deep out pattern against Arizona? The Garoppolo kind of threw Sanders open. They had that chemistry right away. The 49ers need that type of chemistry from their receiver room to take pressure off Kittle and the other weapons immediately in 2021, which is why they drafted Brandon Ayuk. They used the first rounder on Ayuk in 2020. One of the cool symbolic things that I thought from 49ers training camp was that the very first practice, Garoppolo had at least 2 chemistry plays, connections with Brandon Ayuk, including one that was off schedule rolling to his left, where Ayuk just knew where to break, Garoppolo knew where to throw it, and the ball hit him right where it needed to be. It let him, and Ayuk ran down the field. That is the same type of rapport and connection that Jimmy Garoppolo immediately had with a veteran, Emmanuel Sanders. Well, Brandon Ayuk was a veteran, and this is his second season, and it seems that he's built up some of that rapport with Garoppolo. If he's healthy and he stays healthy and is durable for the 49ers, I think he can be that guy that does give the 49ers that presence in the receiving room. And they also have Deebo Samuel, who obviously was a force in 2019, but he wasn't a force in 20 because of injuries. If Deebo can stay healthy, 1-2, he's more experienced than he was in 2019 when he was a rookie. So in 1-2 with Ayuk and Deebo, you have a better top of the receiving room than the 49ers did in 2019, at least to begin the season. Now they're going to be better than when Emmanuel Sanders was cranking out production later in the season, when Kendrick Bourne stepped up because I think he found that number 3 role later in the season. I don't know. It depends on how that receiver room gels together. And how this 2021 receiver room really gels together is going to be dependent on guys like Juwan Jennings coming through, guys like Mohamed Sanu coming through at that big slot spot, and hell, even Jalen Hurd. I know that Jalen Hurd is a mythical character at this point. Nobody's really sure what the 49ers can get out of him, but I truly do believe that they're looking at whatever they get from Jalen Hurd as found money. It was tricky. It was a catch-22 because even though the 49ers don't believe that much in, a secure return on investment from Jalen Hurd, they know this is a risk. They also didn't really feel comfortable just waiving him because he's the type of player whose mythical reputation means that another team would have snatched him off waivers. So Shanahan's not ready to give up on Hurd yet. He only practiced in limited fashion this past week. I am of the belief that Jalen Hurd is not going to be fully ready to really contribute in a meaningful way until a little bit later in the season. I think the 49ers are going to have to ease him in to get that knee tendonitis to stop barking. But I asked Kyle Shanahan about it, and he said, no, I want Jalen Hurd to be one of the top 5 guys week 1. I do think that might have just been rhetoric from Kyle Shanahan to send another message to Jalen Hurd to get him to feel a sense of urgency. But at this point, you've already carried him on your initial roster. They might even put him on IR for 3 weeks. Who knows? I mean, you have flexibility now with Jalen Hurd now that he's made the roster, and it's no big deal, in my opinion, if you do have to wait a little bit with him. You've already crossed that bridge. It's a sunk cost. He's already taken up that roster spot. Do what you need to get Jalen Hurd 100% because he wasn't 100% against the Raiders. I get it. The 49ers put him through a crash test to make sure that he didn't die out there. And when he didn't die, they said, okay, you earned yourself, a second life, or a third life or a fourth life, whatever life you want to call it, to be on a 53-man roster. But now it's in the 49ers' best interest. It's in Jalen Hurd's best interest. It's in Juwan Jennings' best interest to just let the guy get to 100% before you throw him out there again, running routes short of the sticks, dropping passes, clanging off his face mask. Let him get to 100%. He's a little bit bigger, stronger, faster, and fully healthy for the season. And guess what? By the time Jalen Hurd's at 100%, there's going to be inevitably another injury in the receiver room, so you just slide him in right then. You have Travis Benjamin now waiting on the practice squad. You have Juwan Jennings fully healthy. You have Mohamed Sanu, and between Sanu and Jennings, you have 2 guys who could take that big slot position. And I haven't even talked about Trent Sherfield yet. If you're talking about Sherfield as your number 4, the only reason I do that because he's not like a big slot. You're in good shape as the 49ers, right? So, you go Ayuk, Samuel, Sanu, Sherfield, Juwan Jennings. I think you got a decent 5 right there to get this season kicked off. You really need a speed threat. Just call Travis Benjamin up from the practice squad. So you don't have Bourne anymore like you did in 2019. You don't have Emmanuel Sanders. But if this receiving room gels the way that I think they can be formidable. And remember that receiving room is always going to be complemented by what you have at tight end because Shanahan runs the positionless skill position offense where tight ends are doing what receivers do and receivers are doing what tight ends do. It's just this, it's supposed to be this symbiotic thing. In the tight end room, you have Kittle, you have Charlie Warner, you have Ross Dwelly. And then, of course, you could bring up Tanner Hudson from the practice squad. And if you really want to, if you need some more receiving punch, you could bring up Jordan Matthews from the practice squad. But tight ends have big-time blocking responsibilities. And both Hudson and Matthews are cut from the receiver cloth. Let's put it that way. They're receivers first, blockers second. 49ers will be trying to develop that off the practice squad. But with Kittle, with Dwelly, you got guys who do stuff right. And obviously, Charlie Warner is trying to come along as a receiver this year. So, player, punch for punch. I just think I broke it down thoroughly. This offense, if it stays healthy and gels the way it's supposed to, it should be better than it was in 2021. Mainly because that quarterback position should be better and should unlock everything else with both Garoppolo and Lance. I think people are still undervaluing the potential benefit that running 2 quarterbacks and having option power at the quarterback position can give Shanahan's run game. And remember, the run game is the basis of everything. Shanahan runs over 50% of the time. Only the 49ers and the Ravens do that in this league. And when you run that often, you have to be able to do it consistently, and you have to be able to inflict damage that because then you can turn around and start throwing those play actions, and those play actions are huge. So how do I think that the defense will stack up now? So we've gone over the offense. You can draw your own conclusions based on some of the facts I just laid out, but I think the offense should be better. I think on paper, the roster is better. Defensively, it's really interesting to me because the 49ers defensive line is worse on the interior front line because they no longer have DeForest Buckner. But the edge depth and the edge prowess could be better with an asterisk, and I'll tell you what it is in a second. And I think they're definitely better than 2019 with tackle depth behind Javon Kinlaw, behind Eric Armstead if he does get to play on the inside. So let me explain what I mean. First, let's talk about the asterisk. Will Nick Bosa be back to pre-ACL form, one? And will he stay healthy? That's the first asterisk. And two, where's D Ford at? Once the lights turn on, how healthy can he stay? How effective will he be? So far, we've gotten great indications on both of those fronts. Trent Williams says that Nick Bosa is better than he was before. To me, D Ford has looked good in practice. Those are two great things for the Niners. But I'll have to see it, and I'll have to believe it before I see it as far as those two things go and projecting them into the regular season. I think that's just the objective, smart way to look at things. You can get all pumped up about Nick Bosa and all pumped up about D Ford, but you have to wait till the lights come on to be sure that the 49ers are going to get 2019 level production from both of those guys. Because I'll tell you what, 2019 level production was seismic from the 49ers. So you just can't assume that it's going to happen. You can be hopeful that it will, but you can't assume it. That's why Samson Ebukam is on this roster. Samson Ebukam is there really as reliable baseline edge production. He's a guy who has not missed a single game throughout the 4 years of his NFL career. They must build him different up there at Eastern Washington because Kendrick Bourne hasn't missed a single game due to injury either. His only game missed was because of that controversial COVID test back and forth against the Packers last year. So with Ebukam and Bourne, you had two guys coming out of Eastern Washington. Maybe it's the red field they have up there in Cheney, Washington, small town out of Spokane. But yeah, those two guys just never get hurt. So Ebukam is a D Ford measurable type of guy, insane athlete, roars around the edge, is now learning from D Ford. But unlike D Ford, he doesn't miss time. So just imagine how good this could be for the 49ers if Bosa, Ford, and Ebukam stay healthy. They can just rotate these guys through the edge. And then you hope that Arden Key takes the next step under Chris Kasarik, which he's shown some signs of life. And then you have four guys just rotating through the edge. And if those guys are rotating through the edge, guess where Eric Armstead gets to play? Kicks inside on passing downs. You know, instead of being the big end on rundowns, Eric Armstead is working against guards on the inside in a three technique kind of spot. And Javon Kinlaw moves to the one technique kind of spot in those pass rushing situations. And you have Bosa, you have Armstead, you have Kinlaw, and you have either Ebukam or Ford coming off the other edge. I think you're a 49ers fan, you really have to like that in pass rushing situations. On base downs, you have to like Armstead and Bosa on the edges. And they say they want to play Samson Ebukam on base downs. I don't know if I believe him because he weighs like 245 pounds. But either way, if Armstead's tired and Ebukam is as strong as they say he is, and he looks strong on film, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not discounting this. Samson Ebukam is a bulldog on film. I think he plays stronger than his weight, but you could have a line of Bosa, Kinlaw, DJ Jones, your nose tackle at the one tech, and Samson Ebukam on the other side, or Armstead. And Armstead's a hell of a big end on first downs. Like, that is just, it's obscene. I mean, when you could rotate and mix and match those guys, and I'm not even getting into some of the greater depth that this team has, that line looking good. So with the asterisk, they could be better or it could be equal to 2019 on the edges, but that's a big asterisk. Now, where they, are still falling short, and it's going to be hard to exceed 2019, is that front line depth on the inside, because DeForest Buckner is such a good football player. Will Javon Kinlaw make a big leap this year? Maybe. Even if he does, even if Javon Kinlaw makes a huge leap, it's going to be hard for him to be better than DeForest Buckner. That's where the depth on the inside comes in. That's where Kevin Gibbons, I get it, he was on the team for part of 2019, comes in, but now he's more of a full-time guy. That's where Zach Kerr comes in. Excellent football player in limited time with Carolina last year. That's where Kentavious Street comes in. That was his best camp that we just watched here in 2021. That's where Maurice Hurst ultimately going to come in, and other strong P's on the inside. And every time you talk to the 49ers staff, they can't be more complimentary of DJ Jones. So if DJ can finally, deliver another season of health, like alongside Bosa. I know DJ was much more healthy last year than 2019, but you play him alongside Bosa on those edges. DJ is the kind of Brandon Mebane type that Seattle had back in the Legion of Boom days. Cliff Averill, was it Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill benefited big time from what Brandon Mebane did inside. Well, DJ Jones is that type of player for the 49ers. So, hey, on paper, this roster is impressive. Inside, they're deeper. They don't have a DeForest Buckner, but it's still going to be a really good defensive line. It's exactly what we saw in practice. On to linebackers. Here's my big thing about comparing 2019 to 2021. Everybody always, they make this mistake all the time. Everybody always says that, okay, they have all these players. The linebacker core is going to be the same as 2019 and 2021 because they have Warner and Greenlaw. Guys, it doesn't work that way. The 49ers have a better version of Warner in 2021 than in 2019, and theoretically a better version of Greenlaw in 2021 than in 2019. I can tell you for sure that they have a better version of Fred Warner right now. Here's an example. In 2019, Fred Warner's missed tackle rate was 12.4%. In 2020, Fred Warner's missed tackle rate was 4.3%. Fred Warner went from mediocre tackler, great coverage guy in 2019, to one of the best tacklers in football in 2020. He is a bona fide superstar now. So the Warner the 49ers had in 2019, as good as he was, is nowhere near as good as the Warner that the 49ers have now. By that, truth alone, the 49ers linebacker core should be better. And I'm not even, factoring Quan Alexander into the 2019 mix because he was hurt halfway through. 49ers defense had to play without Quan Alexander for most of that season. And when he did come back, he wasn't great in the Super Bowl. Plus, when he was playing, Quan was missing a ton of tackles. So I think this is a much more airtight 49ers unit than we saw before. I mean, Greenlaw has always been a great tackler from day one. He's a clutch tackler. He's a great tackler. Warner is one of the best players in football. He's a bona fide all-pro superstar. It's going to depend, those three linebacker sets, on what they get out of a guy like Azeez Al-Shaair, out of Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, out of whoever else might see time at linebacker. It's going to depend a little bit on that, but it's going to depend mainly on Warner and Greenlaw. And I do think that we're going to see quite a bit of Marcel Harrison, kind of a rover type of package. I mean, as a linebacker, that guy just flies to the football. He flies to the flat. You see him make all of his tackles close to the line of scrimmage. Marcel Harris might be a joker type on this defense that D'Amico Ryans can use in some of his more aggressive situations to blitz, to kind of sniff out some of that stuff that goes to the flat. So absolutely, I think the linebacker core is better in 2021 than in 2019. How about the secondary? This is interesting, okay, because in 2019, you had a good secondary. Richard Sherman put together a great year in 2019, no matter how much people, like to dog him for being toward the back end of his career. However you want to put it, Sherman was good. It was good because opponents didn't want to throw his way. He did his job on his side of the field in that season. Did he feed off the pass rush? Of course he did. Any DB feeds off the pass rush. Sherman fed off of a great pass rush in Seattle, too. You need the pass rush as a DB in the NFL. What's interesting to me is that Barrett right now is now the same exact age that Richard Sherman was when Sherman took his contract with the 49ers in 2018. So the 49ers need a Sherman-type season in 2019 from Barrett in 2021, and that involves staying generally healthy, and that involves being, a solid presence opposite Emmanuel Moseley on the other side. Now, and here's another thing. Moseley, this is just like the Warner stuff. The 2019 version of Moseley was worse than I believe the 2021 version of Moseley will be. I watched a lot of Moseley in training camp, and he looks way more confident than he did in prior years. I mean, he just got picked on by DeAndre Hopkins to open the season in 2021. And I think a lot of that, is something that should help make Emmanuel Moseley better in 2021. And that was in 2020, not 2021. Week 1, 2020, Hopkins just abuses Moseley. You're only as good as your worst cornerback on the field. So Moseley's going to have to be better than that. And I do think, based on what I saw in camp, he will be. But that entails Verrett staying healthy, which is a big if, as we know. And it involves Moseley staying healthy. That second cornerback spot has got to be up to par. because I think the 49ers are a little bit shaky beyond that. I saw too many rookie moments from Ambry Thomas and Diamador Lenore to be fully confident in their ability to perform on a regular season stage in the NFL. And I think the 49ers absolutely agree with me. If they didn't, they wouldn't have carried Dante Johnson on the 53-man roster. So Dante Johnson's there, just this kind of higher floor depth, but you're relying a lot on those two corners to not get yourself into a Brian Allen situation. I think that's where Johnson's the stopgap. Also, Verrett is over 30. K'Wan Williams is over 30 years old. K'Wan had a career year in 2019. Are you going to get the same level of play from K'Wan here in 2021? I don't know. So I think the front line, that 1, 2, 3, 4 secondary with one obviously going to Jimmy Ward, free safety, who's also now 30. 2 going to Verrett, who's also now 30. 3 going to Jaquiski Tart, who I believe also just turned 30 or was close to it. And 4 going to Emmanuel Mosley, who isn't quite 30 yet, but is still trying to grow into his own as far as the NFL goes. That 1, 2, 3, 4 secondary plus number 24, second number 4, K'Wan Williams. It's a little bit long in the tooth, but if they stay healthy, they can be really good. And that's why it's so important for the 49ers pass rush to deliver what it typically does and what it did in 2019. Because that pass rush can make the secondary much, much better. I'm queasy about the depth. Maybe not as much at safety because you have Talanoa Hufanga there. You have Tavon Wilson there. But I'm a little queasy about the cornerback depth, and I'm a little queasy about the age. So I can't just go out and say that the 2021 secondary is better than the 2019 secondary until they prove it. Because Richard Sherman is a hell of a football player in 2019 for the 49ers. And it's going to take some proving for this secondary. The good news for them is that pass rush and a rush over coverage team can make it a lot easier. So final tally, I think the offense is going to be better. I think it is better on paper. And I think that the defense could get there, but there are asterisks. I think the linebacker core is better for the 49ers, but I think that secondary and that defensive line is going to have to overcome some asterisks. And hey, there's no shame in that. That 2019 defense was special for the 49ers, so it's going to be hard to surpass them. But you could see that the 49ers have built themselves a path to do so if some stuff goes right. Okay, I spent about 30 minutes answering one question, so let's go on to the next one. Somebody's convinced right here. Terrence, I think this could be another historically great defense like 2019. Seems like there's almost too much optimism for the upcoming year. I need something to worry about. Beyond injury, do you see anything that could derail the 49ers this year? Well, yes, it's the one thing I didn't talk about. I can't believe I just skipped the offensive lines. This is perfect. I have been hammering this home over the past couple of days. The 49ers are sketchy along the offensive line. It is sketchy up there. That ultimately derailed 2019. You could argue that the offensive line derailed 2020 because Garoppolo got hurt after Laken Tomlinson got beat. I think that's the weakest portion of this football team, and not the starting 5. They look good along the starting 5. I think you go from Trent Williams, obviously a great player, Laken Tomlinson, who I think is very solid, Alex Mack, who I think cerebrally has it all there. I think can really help. Daniel Brunskill, who I think is underrated at right guard, to Mike McGlinchey, who should have a better year in 2021. 1 through 5, that's not a bad group, right? That's solid. But Mack is going to turn 36 this year. Trent Williams is on the wrong side of 30. If Mack misses any bit of time, especially mid-game, you have an issue because you have to bring in a backup center. So I think the 49ers got a lot potentially better when they added Jake Brendel to the 53-man roster because he put together a great preseason for them. And what that did is it also ensured that the 49ers would not have to move Brunskill over in the middle of a game from right guard because that would have disrupted 2 positions, right? Brunskill was the backup center. Now Brendel's the backup center. So that was a big move for depth. But look what else the 49ers have depth. Tom Compton, that's all I could say. Colton McKivitz on the practice squad. Well, obviously he wasn't good enough to make the 53, so the 49ers still have big reservations about Colton McKivitz. Jalen Moore, another 5th-round pick. He's still kind of grown there because you don't know how he's going to perform the regular season. That gets sketchy. And Aaron Banks, who it's a wild card. He was a 2nd-round pick, but so far, based on all we know, thanks to the injury in the preseason, he's a wild card. So the offensive line depth, which is something that every championship contender absolutely needs to have, just is a complete unknown for the 49ers at this point. Now, I'm not going to say that they can't grow into the job. Maybe this season will be about the blossoming of your Aaron Banks types, of your Colton McKivitzes, of your Jalen Moores, even of your Tom Comptons, maybe, or your Jake Brendels too. Maybe all those guys will blossom, turn into very serviceable linemen, just like Daniel Brunskill blossomed and turned into a very serviceable lineman in 2019. If that happens, the 49ers are bona fide Super Bowl contenders. If that doesn't happen, yes, Mark, you should be worried because no team is a championship contender with fewer than 7 quality offensive linemen. That is one of my mottos, and I'm going to stand by it. The 2019 49ers don't get to where they do without a guy like Daniel Brunskill. They had to have 7 to 8 contributors along that offensive line over the course of that season. 7 very solid ones because you had to count Ben Garland on top of Weston Richburg. He was number 6. And then Daniel Brunskill was number 7. And then number 8, Justin School did have to give him some snaps. I don't think they were necessarily good snaps from Justin School that year, but he still gave him some snaps. So the 49ers had 8 offensive linemen playing, 7 at a plus level in 2019 at key stretches, and that allowed them to get to the Super Bowl. It wasn't until the actual game happened where they got caved in by Chris Jones. So that is the one spot for concern. It is the offensive line. In that, I wrote the article, Mike. Barrows wrote an article today in the Athletic, not the Atlantic, about the offensive line. He's your buddy, and I could see you two agreeing on that. 8 guys seems like a message, talent issue there. So, yes, I agree with myself on the offensive line because I wrote the article. In fact, I'm going to share it right now. Why don't I open up a screen here for everybody? We'll do it on this one. Share screen. This is what I wrote about the 49ers offensive line. Here's the link. Sign up with Athletics. Subscribe for it during the course of the season. 49ers offensive line depth is a concern, but the late addition of Jake Brendel helps. And basically what I talked about is how the late addition of Jake Brendel made sure the 49ers are insulated at center and at guard because Jake Brendel played a few snaps at right guard and at left guard during the course of the preseason. Now, the 49ers are definitely more comfortable with Brendel at center than at guard. I think their initial guard depth is Tom Compton, but I think Jake Brendel has a higher ceiling than a guy like Tom Compton. So be sure to check out that article. It is linked in the comment section. Dog, do you collect any 49ers cards, and what's your most valuable card? No, I don't. I'm sorry, but somebody just picked up a rookie Trey Lance card, I believe, that I know. So maybe that one's going to be worth something. Was this draft a bust? The wrong OL prospects. You can't really grade the draft until games actually happen, and typically until after a season happens. But let's go through it. Aaron Banks. I mean, if you had to grade it today, yeah, it's not looking good, but we haven't played a single game yet. He's hurt. Let's see how Aaron Banks pans out. I'm not ready to bury Aaron Banks yet. I am ready to say that it's been a non-ideal start for Aaron Banks, especially being a second-round draft pick. Trey Lance obviously is going to be the story of this draft for as long as this draft is talked about. So if Trey Lance is a guy that pans out, then the draft will be a successful one. If Trey Lance is a guy that doesn't pan out, well, it's going to be hard to justify this draft. But we can look at the other positions too. In the 3rd round, you had Ambry Thomas and Trey Sermon. We're still waiting for Ambry Thomas to develop. I mean, hell, we're even still waiting for Trey Sermon to play his first game. So I thought he had a good camp, but it's going to take a while to know for sure. Did the team not have I don't think they had a 4th round pick, but they had 3 in the 5th round. Jalen Moore, I've liked so far. I think the 49ers are getting good value out of a 5th round pick on the offensive line. Talanoa Hufanga, again, that 5th round is money. They picked him in the 5th round. He's looked great. Who's that 3rd, 5th rounder? Diamador Lenore. I think he's looked okay. I just can't pass judgment until the regular season starts. And then the 6th rounder was Elijah Mitchell, who I think looks pretty good for a 6th rounder. So long story short, it's way too early to call this draft a bust or a success. You just don't know. I mean, and knee draining is not a serious issue. This is maintenance. The dude is 320 pounds and he moves, like a silverback. He calls himself a silverback. So it's going to put some strains on his joints, and he had his knee drained, and he would have played had it been the regular season. Nothing to be too worried about. There's stuff to be worried about along the 49ers offensive line. Trent Williams getting his knee drained in the preseason and missing 2 days of practice is not one of them. It's too early for me to guess. I think Hurd's going to be one of the inactives. That's the only thing I know right now. Hurd, I think Aaron Banks will be inactive. I think the 49ers' worst defensive lineman will be inactive, and I don't know who they're going to determine that to be. Even if they determine Arden Key to be the worst, they might want to make one of the interior guys inactive based on matchups. So maybe those are 3. One of the running backs will be inactive. So I don't know if that will be Hasty or Mitchell, but they may want Mitchell returning kicks. So maybe Hasty will be inactive. And Lance might be inactive. They might have to call Sudfeld up from the practice squad. So you may have to make Trey Lance inactive. It depends on his finger, but a fracture is a fracture. If it's a chip, it's a fracture. So 7 days, that's why John Lynch said that's an optimistic way of looking at it. This could take a bit longer. I was at the 49ers Foundation event the other night, and Trey had a big splint on his finger, and he's not even touching the football in practice. He's grabbing the snap with his left hand, tossing the ball away, and going from there. In fact, we should go to my YouTube channel and take a look at some of the – this will be Inception. This will be me playing for my YouTube channel on my YouTube Live. This is going to be crazy. And I look angry talking in that YouTube channel thumbnail. But yeah, here, we're going to watch this Trey Lance video as I share the screen with you. This is what Trey is doing at practice to be ready, make it big. Catches it with his left hand, tosses it away, and then does the footwork beyond that. So that's where the 49ers are at right now. Does that look like a quarterback who's going to be ready to play in an NFL game against Detroit? Right now, it doesn't. Maybe on Monday he will. Maybe the splint will be off. I don't know. But right now, Trey Lance can't even handle a football with his throwing hand. And I think that's sort of important toward the NFL quarterback job. So we'll see. On to the next one. Be finishing up here a little bit from now. Yeah, I'd be impressed if he took a single snap versus the Lions, and I don't think that Kyle Shanahan will let him unless it's fully on track. 49ers are happy with how the swelling is going down on Trey Lance's finger, but they're not, I think the reality is the reality. Kyle was a little touchy about all the questions. He wouldn't even say which finger it was. It's obviously the right index finger after seeing Trey at the event and after seeing him at practice. But I think that Kyle Shanahan just wants to keep. If I were to guess, Trey won't be ready for week 1 at least, but Kyle has no incentive to divulge that information. He'd rather make the timeline shorter so that the Detroit Lions keep on having nightmares about who to prepare for. If I had to guess, I don't know. That's just my read on the situation. Well, Jalen Hurd, it's going to be a question of timing with Jalen Hurd in this question. It's either going to be, in week 8 when he's fully healthy, or Shanahan thinks it could be week 1. But if Jalen Hurd gets fully healthy and lives up to the potential that Shanahan thinks that he has, he's going to be your big slot receiver for the 49ers. I don't know if either of those two things are going to happen, though. So we have to wait there. A lot of people like Shepley, including the Seahawks, who picked him up off of waivers. However, he was cleared to the 49ers' third best center, so there was no way they could keep him through the cut downs, and they had to waive him. Obviously, Alex Mack is on the team. Jake Brendel was hands down the 49ers' second best center. And stuff got ugly whenever Shepley missed the snap. He was struggling a bit with the shotgun snaps in camp. This is a guy who starred in the CFL, who the 49ers said made tremendous progress over the course of this training camp, but they just couldn't find a spot to keep Dakota Shepley. It was just a mean, the 49ers had the more players picked up off waivers, 3 than any other NFL team, which shows you the depth of this roster that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have assembled. Unfortunately for them, the Seahawks love to pick up 49ers off of waivers. And unfortunately for them, center is a very cerebral position. So I have no doubt that Pete Carroll is getting Shepley to give him the ins and outs of the 49ers offense and of the, centers have to identify safety rotations too. So I'm sure that Pete Carroll is getting some good intelligence from Dakota Shepley as far as a lot of that defensive intelligence goes. So yeah, they like Shepley, but the Seahawks were able to pounce on him because they liked him too. All right, 50 minutes seems good enough. You could take it out. You can check it out down at the bottom. Lombardi himself on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I hope you've enjoyed this Friday Q&A. Make sure you follow me on all those. Make sure you hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. In fact, I should make like a little, where is it? Should make like a little button banner right here. Subscribe on YouTube. I don't think you could click on that directly, but you could click underneath it. And I'm trying to get over 3,000 today. I think I'm at like 2,900, and we just started. So let's get it over 3,000. Seriously, subscribe on YouTube right now. All 157 of you, or however many are watching. I think it's more than that because some of you are watching on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, get up, open a new tab, go to YouTube, David Lombardi, and hit subscribe. Get a lot of you out there. All right, everybody. Thanks to all for watching. Have a great weekend. College football tomorrow. I'm going to be sitting here grilling tri-tip and watching college football. Maybe I'll come on live during the Stanford game or something, and we can all talk about it. All right, everybody, take care. Have a good Friday evening.